been a massive few months, hasn't it? Everything has changed recently, and I mean everything. During normal circumstances, change can be emotionally and mentally draining. These past few months, so much has changed, and it's changed so fast that that emotional drain has started to feel a bit like an emotional whirlpool. Earlier this week, Kirsti and I caught up with local psychologist Renee Shuhyta. We chatted about what it's been like caring for people with fragile mental health during this very weird season of life. And we also chatted about some basic self-care strategies that could be useful for all of us. Hope you can stick around. This is COVID Convos. Well, good afternoon and welcome to COVID Convos. My name is Steve Watt. It's my great pleasure to welcome you again. COVID Convos is a show about ordinary people on the Mid-North Coast during the pandemic of 2020. In each episode, we discuss what it's been like to live these past few months and consider the difference that faith in Jesus has made. COVID Convos is brought to you by ReDiscover Jesus, a partnership between local churches on the Mid-North Coast. Our aim is to promote conversation about the things that really matter in life and the difference that faith in Jesus makes. And as we broadcast our conversations, we hope that you'll also get into conversations with people you know. Perhaps there's someone you'd like to invite to watch the show this afternoon. At any point, you can click on the share button, and even after the broadcast is finished, you can click share then as well. We really want our conversations to help you have conversations with people that you know too. Well, I don't need to introduce my co-host to you, but I'm going to do it anyway. She's fresh from visiting her adult children in Sydney. It's Kirsti Purse. How are you, Kirsti?
Hi, everyone. Very well. Thank you, Steve. Yes, I've had a beautiful weekend down in Sydney, doing lots of walking, spending lots of time talking, and just enjoying what Sydney has to offer compared to Port Macquarie. And enjoying the trip down and back all by myself.
Sure, and much better to be visiting Sydney than Melbourne at the moment.
Absolutely, yes. It's a bit concerning. I guess they did say that ultimately we wouldn't be eradicating the virus, that it would be ebbing along, but it is a little bit concerning nonetheless. And obviously they're putting some restrictions in place now and encouraging people not to travel. Again, and the word is that some of the shops have closed down again in those areas. So, yeah, it's hopefully will not turn into a second wave.
Yeah, I hope so too. I was talking to a uni student who's doing distance study back down in Melbourne, and she was saying that her full-time job has stopped again. So she's kind of sitting around with nothing to do again.
Right.
Yeah, it's tough. Well, it's time to start the conversation. Our guest tonight enjoys reading, walking on the beach, Flynn's Beach particularly, because that's near where she lives. And she's also a tragic fan of Marvel movies. Would you please welcome our guest, Renee Shuhyta? Hello,
Hi.
Renee. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh,
Hi,
look, our
Renee.
pleasure. Now, look, Renee, with all the social distancing that's going on, all the movie schedules have been pushed right out. No one can go to the cinema. And in fact, the production studios can't even finish making their movies. So given that you're such a tragic fan of Marvel movies, what have you been watching to fill your time at the moment?
Okay, well, I think if I'd known you were going to ask this question ahead of time, I might have watched something else. But as you did, as this it is, I've been rewatching the Mission Impossible movies.
Oh, brilliant. Which one are you up to?
The terrible one where they climb up the outside of the Dubai building. That one.
Sure. Yeah, no, I know the one. That sounds like a lot of fun. And there's still a few to go, I think.
Yeah, they keep, and maybe they're not done yet and keep going.
We can only hope.
Renee, I'm wondering, in your role as a psychologist, are you able to give us some understanding about the general experience of psychologists in Australia during the lockdown period?
I think it would vary based on where people were working in terms of how much COVID stuff they were actually seeing. But one thing that lots of psychologists did experience was the really rapid shift to telehealth, to quickly go from seeing people one-on-one, sitting in a room, and to suddenly going, okay, now I've got to figure out how to do this on the phone and make that still work. That was probably one thing that was a really big shift.
Mm. And how did that go for you, Renee?
I found that most people really liked it, actually.
Is that right?
Yeah, but some people were pretty happy to say, look, I can't wait for it to be face-to-face, and as soon as that's the go, then we went straight back to that. But then other people, I think I had last week, one day when it was kind of cold and rainy, I had a whole heap of people booked in face-to-face, and one at a time they all kind of shifted over and said, actually today, can we just do telehealth again? That'd work. And so I think we all kind of got a little bit used to it as well, which is lovely.
So do you think it's going to change the way that you work from here forward? With some people, might this be a way of more effectively working?
It brings more flexibility to it, which is really nice. Mm-hmm. And so that might just make it a little bit easier for people, particularly if they have childcare issues or if they've got chronic health issues, to access some of the services. And I think it might mean that people can access psychologists who are available rather than having to wait for somebody in the local area to be free. And that might just make life a lot easier for people as well.
Because there's some big waiting lists, aren't there?
Yeah, particularly in regional centres there are. Just not enough psychologists to go around, but then shorter waiting lists in places like Centre of Sydney and for some people, and places like central Canberra as well can sometimes have waiting lists that are a bit more reasonable. Yeah.
So Renee, did you encounter an increase in anxiety in your existing patients during this lockdown period? And since COVID-19 has arisen?
I was expecting that, but I would say for most people coming to therapy for things that life brought before COVID, things like grief and trauma and relationship issues and depression, COVID might have added to some of that stress, but I don't think it was central to the stress. So no, not so much.
Right. Interesting. I would have expected at least something. Yeah. But what about calls to crisis lines and so on? Has that increased?
It did during the shutdown, particularly early on in April and end of March. We saw a lot of people ringing, Lifeline particularly got a lot of calls, and Beyond Blue was saying that they were inundated as well. Right. But it kind of overlapped with people stopping going to see their GPs as often. So it's a worry because that's their main point of support locally. And so hoping that as people go back to seeing their GPs and getting that support, getting referred to services that they can access so that they're not having to ring in crisis, that's really what we want for people.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I'm interested, was there any particular age group or group of people that were overrepresented in not coping in that period?
I think some people had already had chronic lung conditions, certainly felt even more vulnerable than before, and so that's quite awful. As far as age groups, I personally, this is not based on research, but just my own kind of clinical experience over the last couple of months, it seemed to be kind of early 20s sort of age group that really struggled with the social distancing the most out of the people that I see, but just because they were way more likely to lose their jobs, often employed in hospitality or retail or things like that got shut down. Universities all changed, TAFE changed, so all of those kind of social connections that people had and those routines and structure all changed. And they're often at an age in life and a time when you can go out and have a lot of fun and your friends are really important to you and you're kind of trying to get away from your parents a bit and you sort of need to get away from your parents a bit and all of a sudden you can't. And I think that all of those things together just created a lot more stress for that age group. Not that other age groups didn't have their own challenges, they did.
Yeah. Mm.
Renee, you've mentioned a whole lot of stuff about kind of stress and anxiety. What are some ways that you would suggest that can help people cope with managing their own kind of stress levels?
We've all got lots of ways that we cope with stress, and it's just good to have a think about. Are the other ways that I'm coping with stress actually refreshing? Are they actually helpful, sort of feel a bit recharged from it? So a lot of the ways that we do cope with stress probably aren't that. They're a bit watching Mission Impossible. Do I feel recharged after that? If I'm honest, no. It's fun, it's okay, but if I compare that to maybe going for a walk on the beach, I know which one kind of wins hands down for stress management for me. So exercise is often a really, really good one. There's so much research about that. Exercising outside, even better if you can. Connecting with friends and family, however you manage to do that, is also really important. But then thinking about, well, what about those other things that are such common ways of coping with stress, like binging on Netflix or, turning towards more destructive things like alcohol. We know that the alcohol shops did a fantastic trade during this. That's really worrying. Things like online pornography, gambling, all of those kind of things which we just don't want now to be the time when people start a lifelong addiction. That going back to things like if you've got a choice, thinking about stress, it's better to go for a walk. It's better to go and do something that's actually recharging.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I think it's a really helpful point, actually, that this is the kind of a period of life where it would be really easy for someone to begin a lifelong addiction to something like alcohol or substance abuse or even pornography. That's an angle I had not thought about at all.
Yeah, and that would be such a sad legacy from this time, right? But we know that during stress, those things happen.
Yeah, especially because early on, think about all the memes about use this time to learn a new language or perfect a new skill or do that thing you've always wanted to do. Oh, gee, I look back fondly on COVID-19. It's when I started being addicted.
And I think some of those memes about learning a language and stuff put a lot of pressure on a lot of us too. It's like, what did you do with COVID-19? Basically I just got through it. And that's okay. I got through it. It was neither wonderful nor disastrous. That's not a bad thing to be able to say. If you did kick some kind of learning goals or felt you had personal growth and you can identify that now, that's fantastic. Some of us won't really identify those lessons for a while. It might be a year's time when we look back and go, oh yeah, that's the time when that started to change. That's fantastic. That those things might not be so obvious for a while, and that's okay.
And so, Renee, I heard quite a few people who all of a sudden were making bread and sourdough bread and doing all sorts of, making cheese and so on. And what about you personally? What did you do that was different? And in terms of managing your own emotional life during that period of time, were there things that you particularly worked on or thought about?
So I was really grateful that we were still able to go and exercise at the beach. So those were things that really helped me, particularly in that kind of early April period when it was a lot more uncertain. We didn't know what was happening. I can't bake bread, or I don't think I really mastered a new hobby or anything like that. But I think one thing that I did think about That's one of the benefits of reflecting on things with people as a therapist, is that you reflect on them for yourself a bit. Was thinking about, well, what do I want this time to be about, and sort of thinking about some of my relationships and how I wanted to make sure that I was purposeful in some of those relationships, making sure I was connecting, particularly with people in my family who are a lot more isolated based on their age and where they are.
Yeah. Mm.
How did you do that?
We all got pretty good at Zoom. We had some fails. We tried Zoom Monopoly, and I will say that sucks. It really does. Don't do Zoom Monopoly. That's the most boring thing to do on Zoom.
So, as in, did you have like 2 copies of Monopoly at either end, or?
We had an interstate game of Monopoly, Queensland, Victoria, and New South Wales, all with a board of their own. No.
Yeah.
Okay.
But a Zoom dinner was much more achievable and much more fun.
Yeah.
So that was good.
How did your faith play a part in kind of coping through the lockdown period?
I thought, particularly in that early stage when things changed a lot and I was trying to master technology I hadn't used before and getting across all those changes. For a little while I was trying to homeschool kids at the same time, which was not fun for them or for me. Thinking about not being able to see family and all those things. Thinking about just that idea of what your foundation is in life. Have you made your foundation something really stable that doesn't shift and change, or is it something that's a lot more temporary? So health and finances and work and even what I do with my spare time, kind of all of that change as it did for so many people. Those can't be the things that I build my life on. And so thinking about, well, what is it that life is built on? I really drew comfort from the idea that God's not changeable. He's not going to disappear. Everything that can happen in life won't change what he's done, who he is, and that's fantastic.
And is there a particular Bible verse that sums that up for you?
It's Matthew chapter 7, and it talks a little bit about building a house on the sand or building a house on the rock. And when the storm comes, which house gets knocked over? So thinking about that, and I think maybe walking on the beach helps to bring that to mind as well. But that verse was really lovely for me.
Yeah, you walk on the beach after a rainy day and it's all nice and smooth again, isn't it? Everything's knocked flat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just thinking about the part that God it plays in your life. Have you considered how God might be involved with the COVID-19 appearing?
Sort of why are we suffering and why is this happening to the world?
Yes.
I think I stopped asking questions about why particular people were experiencing particular suffering ages ago in my career. Actually, I think I had to stop asking that question, and I've just accepted that we don't get that answer maybe in this life. Because certainly I see so many people with so much suffering and they're not different to me. So I don't think I could ever puzzle out why. But I do trust that God's really good and that God made the people in front of me and he made me when I'm suffering. He loves me, and so I just trust on that. And what is really clear in the Bible is how we're supposed to respond to suffering. Responding with I'm supposed to trust in God, supposed to love God, and I'm supposed to love other people. And that doesn't really change whether it's my suffering. I'm still supposed to love the people around me and trust that God's good. If they're suffering, I'm supposed to love them and trust that God's good. And that's challenge heaps, isn't it? That's enough without trying to figure out all the answers of it. Yeah. I can leave that with God. If God wants me to know, I think he'll let me know.
Yeah. Good answer. Thank you.
Now, look, given we mentioned earlier that there's some pretty long waiting lists if someone wants to access psychological help. Have you got helpful suggestions about the kinds of things that friends or family members can do to support someone who's waiting to see a psych?
Okay, well, encouraging them to go and see their GP is probably the most important thing to do, just because then they're getting that support. The GP will know if it's a crisis or not, where to refer them if it is a crisis. I would really be encouraging people to go and see their doctor. There are also some really great resources. So the Lifeline number that you can call 24 hours a day, they're really well trained and really compassionate people on that. They're an excellent resource, just for that kind of I need to talk to somebody now kind of stuff. But as a friend and family member, you can do some practical things. Go, if someone's feeling really depressed and not feeling very motivated, maybe just going for a really short walk, set the bar really low. Okay, we're not going to go for a long walk, we're just going to go for a 5-minute walk. If at the end of that you feel like you want to keep going, then fantastic. It's just giving people that ability to kind of start that process. That's really helpful. There's some really good online stuff as well if people want to find out more. So Beyond Blue is an excellent resource. And the Black Dog Institute's another great place for some good information about that.
And we'll provide links to all three of those services that Renee's just mentioned in the description of this video as well. What about kind of longer term impacts? So you kind of said that there wasn't really the kind of the big spike in COVID related anxiety you were expecting. Have you got thoughts about where this might go longer term?
Oh yeah, depression and anxiety, the rates of that just keep rising. And I think this week the World Health Organization was saying that they expect that to just continue to rise, maybe even to be the most prevalent sort of source of disorder in the world. So I'd have to check that, but I did remember seeing that. But that seems to be the general kind of trend that's been happening over the last few years anyway, that the rates of it keep rising. I wouldn't expect COVID to change that and to somehow make it that we do that less, with all the economic fallout as well. But I think Australia can be really grateful that we might escape some of the trauma that I think some other countries might experience. I can't imagine what it would be like to see lots and lots of people that you knew coming down with the virus and having that really immediate fear for your family. I think, by escaping the kind of worst case scenarios of the virus, we've also really helped our mental health.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Renee. That's really been very insightful and helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, look, huge pleasure. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and some really interesting things to think about.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Next time on COVID Convos, we speak with a local businessman about what it's been like just trying to keep the business afloat and the doors open when everything has changed. The movement of customers, the provision of services, even what they have to do just to open the shop. Please join us next time on COVID Conversations. Thank you and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.